So let's talk about some creative tips. These are brand new. I've never talked about them before. You know, I had an interview, newspaper interview the other day about this book. This is our new edition. Then there's River behind me. And if you guys don't have a copy of it, you should grab it. You should get it on Amazon. And it's available in 3 different flavors on Amazon. You can get it as the printed book, which I really recommend. I'm a big fan of getting printed books that you can do things like I do here, leave notes and write in the margins. But you can also get it as an ebook, right? And an audiobook. A lot of people listen to the book, which I'm happy to hear, which is great. So you can get all 3 flavors, and that's even better. But you guys should own this book, and you should be using it because it really works. The deal is, I've had enough feedback to know that this book does do what I promise, which is it will increase your creativity. It'll unleash your creativity while removing that fear. I mean, how can you resist this? Come on. What am I supposed to do here? Tell this dog to go away. Okay, so let's talk about my go-to tools for creativity. Number 1, you have to have space to create in. And that's in a couple of different senses. And this is in the book, but you should designate your creative space. That's your studio. And I don't care if that studio is a desk that's this big. That's your studio. That's your sacred place. That's where you create. You own that. Don't have a free-floating creative space. Have a designated space that is yours that you can put all your stuff and you can create with, okay? I have this space completely organized for creativity. Like over here, you can see I have a bookshelf and I have my creative books in here. Like for instance, in terms of writing, these are really good references. The Chicago Manual of Style. How often do I use this? Not very often, but if I need to know what is the right way to phrase something, I pull this out. This is a reference book on writing. I've got all sorts of other books in here. I've got my Lightroom. I've got my, what else is in there? All my Ansel Adams books are in here. This is easy to reach too. So that's the thing. You want to organize your space that works and is comfortable for your creativity and encourages creativity, but don't have it just be in some random place. That's your space. Put it together. I mean, it's really, really important. Okay. The other thing about space, it's not just in the physical sense that you need to have space. You need to be looking out at the world. And space comes from viewing things. When you're in a confined place, this is why it's so important when you're working with computers or you're on your phone that you put them down. I mean, my physical therapist tells me at least once every hour, get up, stretch, move around. But really even more important than that physical stuff is looking out into the environment. Get out there and see stuff. That's why walks are so important. But as photographers, what we're doing is we're seeing stuff in a new way that maybe is going on all around us, but nobody else has really stopped to capture that moment. But that comes from seeing. Photography is the art of seeing. Actually, all visual art is. Whether it's filmmaking or photography or painting or drawing, you have to see what's out there. And that's not just an automatic thing. You have to practice it. Practice your seeing. That's why I say go out and do this, right? Or do that. But, use your framing tools. Because here's the trick in terms of you see stuff out here. Don't have a camera pressed to your face. That's in my book also. Just look without a camera. Go around and check the scene. What's interesting? A story from my son, actually working in a startup, and Annie Leibovitz came to photograph. Annie Leibovitz, right? And he said it was really interesting. She just walked around for about a half an hour looking at the space. No camera in her hand, no lighting, just looking around to spot what are the good places to photograph here? What's going to be photogenic? So take that from her. That's a good piece of advice. Get your space out there. Get your physical space, your studio space, and then your mental space. You know how mentally you can have your space be about this big? Doesn't feel good, does it? It really feels bad. Or you can go out and you're in a beautiful place, like, you're in Yosemite, or you're at Carmel Beach, or you're at the Grand Canyon, or someplace where there's a lot of space, and you go out there and you kind of feel like bigger and bigger and better and bigger. You can do that anywhere. You can do that in a city. Are you looking at things that are like 1 inch in front of your face? Or are you out there really looking? I did a film in Times Square in New York, and it was like interesting because there's a lot of space there, but there's a lot of people moving around in it. And I had to kind of get over my stage fright while people are around. Didn't matter, actually. They weren't really paying that much attention to me. But that's part of owning your space. Okay? The other thing, there is this quality that you have to adopt in your creativity. River is just demanding my attention. And that is, it goes like this. The way that I do not like to hear it phrased, but you've heard this, and that is fake it until you make it. I don't like that because the fake part is just wrong. The truth is you have to pretend. You do have to pretend when you get going. I'm going to give you an example of pretending. I pitched my original show, which became Advancing Your Photography. Started off as, I called it the photo show. I just had this sort of almost generic name. And I went to SanDisk, our friends who make the memory cards. Okay, River, I know. These are my go-to cards. There we are. There's a SanDisk. It's an old one. I pitched the idea to them of doing these interviews with photographers. I had actually made 3 of them. First one I made was, actually we filmed Annie Leibovitz going through her exhibit in San Francisco. It wasn't really an interview, but I had my team and we were wandering around with her filming it. The second one was Ansel Adams' son in Yosemite, right? And I'll tell you why I chose this as my second one. And then the third one was Chase Jarvis in his studio in Seattle. How did I end up with Annie Leibovitz and Ansel Adams as my first 2 videos? I wrote a list. I took a list out. And I said, okay, I'm going to start this show. Who are the top photographers in the world that I should feature? Because if I get the top photographers in the world, I'm going to get the rest of them, right? So I wrote Ansel Adams, Annie Leibovitz. Okay, River, on my little list there, you see that? And then later I thought I need a really contemporary photographer. And Chase was kind of, at that time, I mean, he still is. He was very hip and upcoming. So I put his name down there, Chase Jarvis. Those are my top 3. And those were the top 3 videos that I had. I went to SanDisk in 2009, 2008. We were in the height of the recession. I don't know if you guys were around then. The real estate market had collapsed. Stock market had collapsed. It was a mess. I go to SanDisk. I've never shot a video in my life. I've never edited a video. I didn't even do little home movies and stuff, you guys. I was a still photographer. But I thought, this is what I want to do. And I fortunately had a really good producer that could do this stuff. But I went to them, I pitched the idea of this show. Okay, this is a real story. I pitched the idea. They But, they didn't really give me any big feedback. They just kind of, okay, all right. I didn't hear from them for a week or two. You get nervous when you put your heart into something and then you don't hear anything. You know what that feels like, right? It's like, what do I do now? I don't want to pester them. Maybe I send them a reminder email. That's about it, right? And then you kind of just play the waiting game. So then I get a call. Mark, we'd like to have a meeting lunch meeting. How would you like to meet at the Four Seasons Hotel? They have a restaurant there, which happened to be right next door to where I was living. Okay, they didn't say, Mark, we're hiring you. It was really funny. You know what this meeting was? No, she's chewing paper here. You're interrupting my story. This meeting was a production meeting. They never said, you're hired. This is, bravo, well done, sign the contract. It was a production meeting. As a matter of fact, the contract didn't actually get formally signed for about 6 months because we had to go back and forth on their legal stuff and whatnot. But meanwhile, we just marched ahead. But we had a production meeting, what we were going to do. And it was like, I thought, they're probably not inviting me to go to the Four Seasons restaurant to tell me they're not hiring me. And that was it. That's a true story. And I literally had to pretend. I'm not going to say fake it. But what did I do then? I got myself trained. I trained myself in video. I trained myself as an editor. Every time I was hanging around with my team, what are we doing here? How are we setting it up? What camera are you using? What lens are you using? How's the audio set up? What are the lights? I was doing what Clint Eastwood did when he was a young actor on the set of Rawhide, if you guys remember that. Rawhide, he was Rowdy Yates in Rawhide. And what did he do when he wasn't on camera? He hung out with the director of photography or the director, and he asked questions and he observed what they were doing. That's how he became one of the greatest directors in the world, just by doing that. And that's a really powerful lesson, you guys. Do not be afraid to ever ask questions of somebody who knows how to do it. They actually enjoy telling you. So that's tip number 3. So what do we got? Get your space together. Pretend. Get your idea and go out and pitch it. Don't be afraid. Okay? You do need proof of concept. Like I did have these 3 videos that were professionally produced. Okay, I did have that. This wasn't just made up. And they were like, oh, not bad, Mark. Start with Ansel Adams, you got Annie Leibovitz, and you got Chase Jarvis. Okay. So was that luck? I had to reach out to all those. Those just didn't fall out of the sky. I mean, I didn't have anything to go on. I had no YouTube channel. I had never done this before. I warmed up my communication with Ansel Adams' family, and that opened some doors naturally once I got that going. And then Chase, to his credit, just kind of took me on faith. I wasn't anybody. I had no notoriety of any kind, really. But he invited me up to his studio in Seattle. We shot that film, and then he introduced me to a whole lot of other people. So that was really helpful. Thank you, Chase. I helped him too. I introduced him to SanDisk, and that was a big deal for him. So I'm just telling you this story, you guys. This is a real deal. I've got more of these kinds of stories. But you got to believe in yourself. As Modern Times said, believe in yourself. God will help us when we try. That is true. You do get that extra force of nature, of God, whatever you want to call it, that will propel you, but you do have to believe in yourself. And you know what? I'll tell you one other thing. Be willing to fail. Be willing to fail. It's just going to happen. You're going to fall on your face. People are going to reject you. You're going to, I didn't tell you that before I did that SanDisk pitch that I had pitched to 25 other places, So I even had a big big deal with a very prominent company that you guys use all the time. I'm not going to tell you who it is. Adobe. Okay. And then we had a really big deal set up with them. And then the recession hit and they just withdrew it. That was heartbreaking. So you got to get over that. I mean, it was like a dream deal. But then the SanDisk deal turned out to be the new dream deal. They hired me for 2 years to go out and interview photographers. I owned all the content, which I still do. That became the basis of my YouTube channel. Then they sent me around to do workshops in all the major camera stores in the country. B&H, Adorama, Sammy's Camera in LA, Roberts in the Midwest. I mean, it was really cool. What a cool job. And then they'd call me up sometimes. Mark, can you come over and just do a workshop for us? Oh, yeah, sure. Why not? And awesome. That was all done because I really believed in what I was doing, which is what I'm doing now, which is helping people be more creative. And I love that. It's one of my greatest joys. Okay. Please subscribe and enable the bell so you don't miss any of our new shows. Like the video and please share it and leave your comments. I love hearing from you. And remember to get out and capture your own images of life.